This is Mike Skill. You're listening to Rock at Night with Vlad.
Hi, this is Rock at Night. I'm Vlad. The origins of Rock at Night are deeply rooted in both the music and people of Detroit. So I'm ecstatic that tonight's guests comprise a trio of Detroit rock's history's most illustrious sons. As a founding member of power pop mainstays The Romantics, Mike Skill has been the group's longtime guitarist and principal songwriter. He's been the architect of the band's numerous rousing hits, which are still staples on radio, TV, and film worldwide. Mike can indeed rock you up. Lately, he's also been an active solo artist, with his most recent release being the knockout track 67 Riot, which, not coincidentally, includes a collaboration of our other guest today. The word revolutionary tends to be overused in rock, but I struggle to think of any other way to describe Brother Wayne Kramer. The co-founder of the Motor City 5, the MC5. Wayne has been a revolutionary both in sound and activism. His guitar work and stage bravado forged a strident, sonic, and polemic template for generations of guitarists who wanted to challenge both the musical and social status quo. Without Wayne, there is no punk rock. Now a solo artist, soundtrack composer, prisoner, rehab activist, and even celebrated author, Wayne brings his identifiable guitar work and a palpable urgency to Mike's Riot single. And last but certainly not least, we're joined by a dear friend of Rock at Night, producer Chuck Alkazian. The Buddha of the Detroit music scene, Chuck has a resume sparkling with collaborations with an array of artists like Soundgarden, Pop Evil, Bob Seger, Yvonne Krall, and now Mike Skill. Chuck's approach is all about the song, and he certainly brings it with his production of Mike's single. Gentlemen, a warm welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Vlad.
Here.
Mike, how did 67 Riot come together?
Well, I lived through, I think Wayne went through it too, probably. 1967, the riot in Detroit happened. It was happening around the country, civil unrest. And I was about 12 years old or 13. I had discovered the MC5 a couple of years before that by the single Looking at You and a couple other things. And I had a little garage band at the time. And this all happened in that year, and it was the love and peace generation, and it was this riot, and it was just a really firebrand time. I mean, anything could go up at any minute, and there was so much creativity going on, art-wise and music-wise, culturally, everything was changing. And these days happened in Detroit, and the National Guard was down the street from my house, helicopters. The news was over bleeding it, if you want, for a bad way to put it, but and instilling a lot of fear on folks on the east side and around the areas outside of the center of Detroit. They had it like they were gangs were gonna come into your neighborhood, and that's what I remember. And we had a curfew, 6 o'clock or 6:30, and I'm learning rock and roll, and I'm listening to MC5, and I'm listening to every Motown and everything that's going on in the city. And then you fast forward to the 90s, and I moved to Portland, and I started writing a lot of songs on my own, finishing complete songs for my own perspective. And I had this idea I wanted to always do something with 67 Riot in my head. And the name came about, some lyrics came about, a groove. I had the groove down just for the first part of the verse. The words started really, really pulling together, and we recorded it. I recorded it in my little studio outside the city in a little schoolhouse. And that's where I finished it pretty much. All the other parts came together. Recorded it. I met Chuck, came together with Chuck, and I had some other songs. He took those songs and took it to the next level. They were mixed at my studio, but they really went to the really incredible. They just sound great. That's pretty much it. And then I always thought I'd get to my songs. I want to have other people come in and play on those songs. People I grew up with, friends, other musicians. And so Wayne was the next. I was so inspired by Wayne and Fred Sonic Smith, as the way they melded their guitar orchestrated guitars. I mean, you have Allman Brothers that did that. The Five did it in a really raw factory city aggressive way. And if you're a guitar player, it's the two guys you want to listen to about learning how to write and put guitars together and form songs. And then you got the attitude and the energy and the whole imagery around it. But they're really part of my growing up in a big way with the drummer. I was a drummer from high school. I had the Romantics, Jimmy. We both were fanatics. We were all fanatics for the Five and all the stuff coming out of Ann Arbor. And we're 14 years old. We couldn't get into Grandy yet, but anyway, that's how it happened. And Chuck took it to the next level. And here we are. And I called Chuck. I called Wayne, and asked him if he would like to check it out. And I sent it over. He liked it and agreed to play on it. And I'm really fortunate to have someone like that to be playing on it.
Oh, it's an incredible single, and you can hear your songcraft for me is legendary. But to have that sonic icing that Wayne brought to it, and Chuck's ability to get the lyrics out of that mix, it's really very endearing. And all three of you gentlemen, I'm kudos for that.
They're not really good. It's hard to explain how songs come, but that's just the way it did. It just kind of happened. Things just happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting the timing now. The single was, I think, initially conceived like a historical piece because obviously there's some resonance with you in terms of what happened when we were all younger. But now it's very urgently topical for the whole world. Obviously, in light of all the shocking events that happened and this thing of how we've come of kind of a full 360 from that. What goes through all of your minds as you see the song and its subject matter as it hits the streets now?
Well, I don't know. Anyone else want to take it?
Like Wayne, you know as well as anybody the dissonance that was in the streets and there was in the society at that time. And you're seeing a song now kind of reprise that. Does it make you think back? Have things changed? Have our social dynamics really fundamentally changed at all in that period of time? Or are we just have we been just treading water and we're kind of back to where we were at that point in time?
We're not treading water. The rebellion of '67 in Detroit was a wake up for the nation, and we're in another level of that now. Police have been murdering Black people forever in America, since the beginning of America. But it's really with the coming of cell phone cameras, everybody knows about it now, or at least white America knows about it. So, to reach into the past to a touchstone like the rebellion in Detroit or in Newark or in Watts, because remember, the whole country went up in flames. I think traditionally you cannot keep your boot on people's neck without them rebelling at some point. They're going to buck. In the heart of every person is the desire to be free and to be respected and to be considered. And I think that's where we're at now. Certainly with the coming of this developer-in-chief, this buffoon that we have who's parading as president, people have had it, and I don't blame them. I've had it too.
Indeed. Well, police brutality and incarceration are themes that have manifested very prominently in your life and work, Wayne. The MC5's performance at the Apocalypse, that was the '68 convention in Chicago, is still spoken very reverentially. And your encounters with the law and the pen have been well chronicled, like in your autobiography. From your perspective, has the order or the position of the police state in the U.S. materially changed since those heady days back in the Belle Isle and Chicago riots?
Not really, because they're still the biggest gang in town. And, they have legitimacy on their side. They have guns and they have badges, and they're, authorized to use them. That dynamic hasn't changed. I like the idea that's emerged recently that, a policeman with a gun is not the best idea for all of society's challenges. That maybe a mental health worker could go in and have a more successful outcome. Maybe a social worker could go in, or someone that was trained in dealing with volatile situations. There are groups of volunteers, what do they call them, interrupters, that are going into neighborhoods where there's heavy gang activity and trying to defuse volatile situations. I think these are all creative solutions to the problem of an overarmed police, quick to pull the trigger and not even ask any questions later.
Mike, you're in the Portland area. I believe Portland's embraced that model to some extent, haven't they, with regards to more intermediate?
Well, Portland's pretty. They've a lot of young people. It's a lot of young people, and they've got a lot of new ideas. And the young kids are coming up and not standing for it. And they've got the internet, like Wayne's saying, and black folks are out there, and it's really actually peaceful until it gets to that point where they're downtown, and then there's a few kooks that will start a few fires, but it's a 1 or 2 block area. And then you've got cops ramming people that are doing nothing. They're just ramming them on the ground and then knocking them silly and other things, really messing them up. But the city is a young city. It's rebellious here. People are free thinkers, and it's a working class town in the way of from the lumber times. It's still that kind of thing, like Detroit. I mean, it's still got that kind of vibe.
Yeah,
working class town.
Well, interesting. You should mention that. Let's talk a little bit about Detroit heritage and influence. That's something that's common to the four of us. We all came from parts of town that perhaps didn't afford young people the kinds of life opportunities that somebody from a townier place might take for granted. The choices in life were either to work on the line or in a shop, and there wasn't much else, and the system was kind of architected to preserve that kind of industrial Victorian order. Mike, you're from the east side. I think you went to Finney, right?
Yeah, I went to school on the east side, a few different schools, Jackson Junior High, Finney High School.
Okay. And Wayne, you and your brethren from the MC5 were from Lincoln Park, I think?
Yeah, but I was all over the place. I grew up in Detroit, and then we moved downriver. Then I moved back to Detroit for my final year of high school. I went to Cooley.
Ah, okay. Interesting. The people always talk about Lincoln Park, but actually you have a stronger Detroit resonance to that.
Yeah, Lincoln Park was our adventure into suburbia.
Yeah, exactly. And Chuck and I are from the Downriver area, but it's not to be confused with the Down Riviera, but that's another matter. So in spite of these humble upbringings, you all exhibited a fierce ambition to transcend your surroundings. And it's not exaggeration to say that the world took notice. How did your backgrounds shape your vision and maybe your concept or your ideas as young artists? Mike?
Well, a working class family. My dad would move into a house, fix it up, and we'd move to the next house up a little bit level higher. And we did that for 4 or 5 houses and get us into a good place to live and all that. And my brother worked at Chrysler. My mom worked in the auto industry in a shop. I worked in the auto industry at shops to buy a guitar, buy amps. Worked either from midnight to 6 or 11 o'clock to 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, and go to sleep and go rehearse for a few hours, and then that's what it was after school, after high school, And yeah, well, Wayne knows Motown and black music was a big deal in Detroit. There was a lot of early, not I want to call it doo-wop, but vocal groups were the big thing, and then you had the Motown stuff happening, and that kicked it in. And it's always been a pretty down on the street type of sound. I mean, I remember I was pretty young. Well, I remember when Smokey Robinson's first song came out. It's early, really street music. You felt like these guys were, they were part of the community. Motown was part of the community at that time. And, that moved right up into the rock era when the rock era happened.
Right,
The
in
Five
touch.
reminded me like a combination of the Who, Yardbirds, and then you could throw a little bit of James Brown showmanship in there. Almost, but in a new era. And I mean, Wayne was doing James Brown steps on guitar. He was dancing like James Brown on guitar, and it was like
Stole it all from James Brown.
Yeah. Right. I don't give away your secret, but
no secret.
Yeah. And then there were a lot of bands I think were soul bands in Detroit from the late 50s and 60s, soul bands doing Ray Charles and James Brown, and then they do standards. And all the bars were mostly older folks going to bars, hearing a piano bar and the lounge singers and all that. It wasn't until later when the British invasion that all the bars became rock clubs. A lot of them. So, but in Ann Arbor was cool. Being Ann Arbor is a lot like Portland. That's my comparison. Portland and Ann Arbor are kind of it's like Ann Arbor was, but that was the new rock thing, the new culture area, the Wayne State and Wayne State downtown Detroit.
And Brother Wayne, how about yourself? I mean, your background, it's been documented in your biography. Like, how did that shape your identity earlier on musically and maybe even to this day? Because obviously people change over time, but is that still a part of your identity in terms of how you look at the world and your music?
Of course. Well, in the 60s, there was a great focus put on being original, having your own sound and your own look. And the MC5 worked pretty hard on that. And I always felt like I always had a kind of resentment with the international music scene, because they kind of looked down their nose at us being from Detroit. Sorry. As if we couldn't have good ideas or breakthrough ideas, or the original thought that you had to be from London, or you had to be from New York, or you had to be from San Francisco. And it kind of motivated us to dig in even harder, to kick out the jams, to kind of show the world that, we had good ideas, we were about something, and in fact, our ideas were a little more stretched out than the stuff I was hearing from London or San Francisco. So, it was just really taking pride in a place that, I adored living in Detroit. I was proud that we made American cars in Detroit, and that we honored and found nobility in hard work and hard labor. And that stayed with me all my life. I mean, years and years later, when I made the mistake of trying to form a band with Johnny Thunders, it'd be like, come on, man, it's 6 o'clock. Let's go to work. And he'd say, man, I don't go to work. I go to play. And my perspective was always, I'm going to work. I took pride in working, and it might just be a semantic thing, but I don't think it is. I think it has to do with your general, perspective on how you fit in the world.
That's a very shrewd observation, and I think as I talk to many Detroiters who have been diaspora into the world, they all share that kind of identity where work has shaped you, even though you don't realize it at the time when you're younger. It becomes part of your grain, your DNA, and you never lose that, no matter whether you go into creative work or otherwise.
And I never realized until I started touring in the MC5 that in other cities, all the white people lived over there and all the people of color lived over here. Because in Detroit, my earliest memories are other kids of color, and that other cities didn't share our knowledge and experience with organized labor, with the union movement. Mm-hmm. We all knew what union meant in Detroit. The United Auto Workers affected everybody and showed us that that collective bargaining was the only way we could compete with big corporations, the auto companies. So, I didn't really snap to that until I was touring in the band and started realizing, shit, these people don't know anything about the union. They don't know anything about people of color, of different cultures, of different music.
Yeah, and it seems to drive a lot of disdain. I think people aren't familiar with that, and they, at least stateside, of what I'm seeing is that people view it very hostilely.
I went to a meeting. We tried to organize the film and TV composers out here in LA. Mm-hmm. And the National Labor Relations Board has always kind of kept us out. We had this meeting, and the Teamsters came, and they were going to take us under their wing like they had done with the casting directors. And the Teamster chief came up, and he started talking, and he said, listen, if you guys are with us and those film producers and those TV big shots start to abuse you, we will visit them with misery and agony. And all these fucking effete film composers are all at Twitter. Oh my goodness. Oh, gosh, did you hear what he said? Oh no. And I'm like, what are you guys surprised? That's the Teamsters, That's how they roll.
That brass knuckles and
Detroit had its in the 30s was the union riots, right? In the 30s.
Oh yeah, lots of them.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stories are legendary of Harry Bennett being the hired thug for Henry Ford, and how he marshaled all these people from the military to be pretty much head crackers and.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a huge thing, and it's still an issue today. I mean, granted, the unions have an element of corruption in themselves, but still, in principle, union is where we want to be.
Exactly. But mention Hollywood, Wayne. Really enjoyed your soundtrack to the Cream documentary. How did your involvement with that come about?
They asked me to sit for an interview, and in the process of the interview, I said, "Who's scoring this?" And they said, "Well, we don't know. We haven't thought." And I said, "I am." Who else should do this? I mean, I'm not only a client.
Well, I want to ask Wayne. There were so many bands coming into Grandy. I mean, you had to be meeting Janis Joplin and the whole band, and Cream, Yardbirds, Jimmy Page. Everybody was coming through.
Oh, it was terrific.
How was that? That was
very exciting.
I think it's not. And I think in some ways, Led Zeppelin, the first album, it had that Detroit thing because of you guys and because of Detroit. We affected a lot of groups, I think, Detroit.
And still do, Detroit, it's a tough city, and it's a tough city to do something in the arts. And if you can find a path to recognition out of Detroit, that will sustain you well. I mean, look at Eminem and you guys in particular. When I have to tell you, when I got back from the penitentiary, I started going around to clubs to see what was happening, because when I left, there was no punk rock, and when I came back, someone said, "You need to go see the Romantics," and I went to the Silverbird Lounge, And I was knocked out with you guys. You killed me. I mean, you looked great. You wore band uniforms. You had all red leather outfits on, and you sang good and you played good. And I thought, all right, everything's going to be fine, man. These guys are carrying on. They're rocking it. They're holding up the tradition. Yeah, you guys are a great band.
Yep, that's right.
And they still are.
You guys were you guys and a few other bands were the influence. You know, the attitude, the way we hit our instruments different in Detroit, I think. We play them different. We hit them in different. We hear it. It's got to hit
it's
you.
In the water.
It's got to come.
Something in the water.
The bass has to. Yeah.
Yeah. And you hear that in some of your work, Mike. I remember what I like about you, there was an interesting chiming effect to your guitar on your, was it a Rickenbacker you played on that track or?
Yeah, it was. And I got to say the songs that I listen, like Looking at You and Shaken Street. I mean, that's my influences and three chord songs from, from 60s, early 60s, the 3-chord Buddy Holly songs and all 50s.
Right.
Those are the things that did it. I always wanted to be simple, straight ahead. Everyone was getting way off track with these 20-minute guitar solos and drum solos and keyboard solos. Rick Wakeman, you go to a show and it's like this big, and that's what punk rock came back. It was all kind of new wave of punk, was just to get back to basics. Like the five, doing rock and roll with Chuck Berry licks and all that. And,
yeah, very elemental. Yeah. That's essential for honesty in music.
Yeah.
Well, 67 Riot's been a clarion call for these fucked up times, and the reception for both the message and the sound of the song has been very strong. We loved it at Rocket Night. Are there any plans for a follow-up?
Of more music?
More music, maybe a collaboration further with you gentlemen, I think.
2020 Riot.
Yeah.
2020 Riot.
Pandemic Blues, I don't know, but...
the Pandemic Blues?
No, I'm just throwing that out there. But Wayne, so I'm going to just keep sending a few songs to Wayne, and if he likes something, maybe that'll happen, or if it works out the way it works out.
Happy to do it. Send me everything.
Yeah, and I mean, I think kind of like this whole thing is making a lot of musicians work in different ways now. Calling other people, we're at home. We can catch them. We can catch them at home now. They're not on the road
right.
or in Europe or something, and I could call up someone and say, "Are you free to check this out, check that out?" So I think it's going to happen more and more.
Has it changed for all of you on the call? Has it changed how you're approaching and thinking about music? Because the whole process of the protocol of getting a studio, no offense, Chuck, but finding a studio and getting somewhere, is it more intimate now, where you can perhaps create something more intimately and then share it with a collaborator and have it be a kind of a tighter feedback loop? Or have you seen any kind of difference when it comes to that process?
Chuck has. I see amazing humans right now collaborating and just sending it off to guys like me to finish up, and I've seen people talk that I would never have thought in a million years would have worked together in the last 6 months, and it's really exciting. And I think being from Detroit, I think a lot of people are looking to the musical cities to kind of guide some of these musicians right now who they're lost. They're not lost musically, but they're lost humanitarian wise, not in their belief system, but in just they're confused as to how they're to go forward with their careers, So I'm sure you guys could add to that.
Yeah, well, there's no money.
You hit it, Wayne. You hit it right there.
The hedge fund guys took all the money, and the ISPs make all the money off of our work, and they don't pay us. You can't make a living as a session player, or you can barely make a living touring.
Streaming is the downfall, I'm afraid.
Until there's a new paradigm that figures out how to pay the creators, we're in a tough spot.
That's correct. That is very correct. You've become a merchandising machine. You basically have turned into the rock and roll Gap. the store, the Gap.
Right.
It's like you pray to God that you can sell T-shirts and merch just to cover your bus money, you know, or like, I think Vlad, we talked about this before.
Yep.
It's like, unfortunately, the art has been so watered down. And that's why I work with guys like Mike and Wayne and the veterans, because I mean, the thought processes behind everything is about work. And a lot of these younger artists, they're starving because they've relied on just touring, and they haven't monetized all of their talents as well as they should, you know?
Right.
You know, people don't have any money to spend, you know? It's really sad right now.
So you give them the music and sell them a shirt.
That's exactly right. Exactly, Wayne. That's exactly what I was saying. Is that wrong? Is that right? Who knows? You know,
Used to be the other
it
way.
used to be the other way. Exactly, Vlad. It was the other way.
You'd buy a single or an album, they'd throw in a promotional tchotchke, and now, and I don't see it debating. I think if you work in the digital culture, you see that the desire to further commoditize any experiences or interactions, as they call it, it just cheapens even more so. And they view artists and content creators as merely being data dumping points. They're not looked at as artists. And until that changes and the system changes, we're kind of being this quagmire.
Well, it's up to us to, I mean, I can't speak for Wayne and Mike, but as far as, you know, I'm a little younger, but I have nothing but respect for those moments that they have created. And I try to instill that in the younger artists that I produce. And it's really, I think kids are scared to take it to another level, where, you know, getting in a van and just playing your ass off and playing songs. Now these kids they're getting Apple Music streamed for $9.99 a month. Are you kidding me? You can listen to like 100 million songs. It's like,
right.
I always refer to when you go to see a movie and you always see the stunt man do the shindig, and at the beginning of the movie, and then the message comes up, don't steal movies, because I'm risking my life making this movie so you can eat your popcorn and your frothy drink. And you know, it's the same thing with music. You know, we bust our ass.
Right.
We bust our ass. All my friends are losing trillions of dollars right now, like touring and all the techs, I mean, it's just quagmire. That is the best word. I think it's such monumental shit times, as far as, see, when there were riots were going on, when Michael and Wayne were talking about, people could still work. You could still have some sort of sensibility of work. People can't even go outside right now, you know, let alone make any money. And I think that's what Wayne was attesting to, and Michael, they were just saying, you know, it was just very stressful times, you know, right, at the back then. But now it's like it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting, you know.
There's no films and TV in production, or as much as there was, you know, on a smaller scale. So no new songs are getting taken from bands or writers, like Wayne's saying, and less work for Wayne for doing movies.
I saw your post.
Movies coming out.
Sorry, go ahead.
They're just getting back into it, I guess, slowly. But you know, just that whole money stream from that industry. I read that the music industry, and it's not unbelievable that it's larger than agriculture.
Yeah.
Just the agriculture in America. What we do is like so huge, money wise. They come generated.
Well, the hip hop guys and women seem to, you know, if they control the means of production, they are some of, you know, at the very top of the pyramid, they're realizing profits and you know, getting paid. But, you know, even that, you know, these are Faustian deals that they make, these 360 deals, and they look good, and, you know, they can make an expensive video, but they have to pay for all that. And at the end of the day, there's usually no money left. I mean, the caterer gets paid before the artist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're making a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a good time for a life in the arts. I would discourage young people from attempting it, but they don't listen to me anyway. So I wouldn't listen to me. You have to do this because you love doing it. You love the process of creating music, of bringing your friends in and talking about what you're doing and going out and trying to win people over. Yeah, mm-hmm. If you don't love all of that, then you can't do this kind of stuff. This, because there's virtually no money in it. It's a tough game right now.
Interestingly, hearing all of your stories here, it takes us back to how you all started from a point of love in your career. You had a love for justice, you had a love for rhythm and music and the like, and that compelled you. And well, there were periods of time in which obviously it was more lucrative, or at least it was able to sustain you better. Now you have that one tangible thing actually intangible thing from when you started, that love. That's carrying you forward. That's sustaining you, and it's not ironic. It's not coincidental. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Mike.
The passion is passed on generationally. Like I'm waiting to be me to people. It just goes on. And I was going to say, Chuck just did you did a record with Ivan Kral. He had to go. I mean, it was huge in Czechoslovakia, but here you don't even know it's around. He probably made a few dollars on that, but that's a good example of you got to go out, do what you can do. I just got to go. Yeah.
He went to where the people supported him. It's really interesting. And as everyone knows, I mean, and Vlad, we've talked about this before. The stories I've heard from Ivan, just from working with Jim and Iggy and Blondie and all these amazing humans and the passion that was behind it and the scene, like what Wayne and Michael said, it was street music with support groups. It was hardworking people who wanted to just catch a break, man, and just spread that love. And we always talked about, Ivan always called me Bubba. He'd always say, Bubba, you don't love what you do. You are what you do. And basically he was saying in his thought process was, it's just me. And it's not a labor of love. It's a love of labor, and that's what I think went into 67 Riot was Michael had a story to tell and we brought it out and Wayne was our champion who put the cherry on top, and what an honor for me to work with both of these gentlemen. And, Mike and I were just like little kids talking about Wayne while we're working on this song. And, we just, and Wayne's an extreme gentleman and cares about his love and his passion for what he's done. I mean, we can't even name, we could sit here for 5 weeks and we still wouldn't even talk about all the accomplishments of Wayne and Michael, let alone myself, not even close to these two. But, it's an honor just to even just sit on this Zoom, so.
It's an honor for me, certainly. So, Michael, what's next up with you? What projects or what endeavors are you looking at next?
You can't force, in my opinion, you can't force songs like 67 Riot. So you can't really it's got to come together organically. And I recorded a bunch of those tunes and I gave them to Chuck. Chuck mixed them. So I've got a few more left to release this year. So I think I'll get one more single out maybe and hopefully an EP and then a long player, an album. So that's in the next, within the next 6 months or so, something like that. we'll just kind of skate however we can with this whole thing. I don't know, playing live. There's not much playing live right now, so
Keep singing, Mike. Mike, keep singing, man. You're a good singer. Keep singing. I love the sound of your
Thanks,
voice.
Yes,
You're a good
indeed.
singer.
very good. Thank you. All we can do is just keep going forward, and I don't know what to say. Much more than that.
Mike has so many songs. It's funny. It's Mike's got hard drives and hard drives. I'm sure Wayne does too, as I do as well. And I think the difficulty is going. We can take any song and make it fun and awesome. It's just like we try to look for the meaningful things, the things that the legacy, leave the legacy. I mean, that's kind of where I think all bands should be right now. So.
We came from this really big thing out of from Detroit. I mean, it was really a passionate thing, and it's something that it just won't go away. It's something in us that's just it's on us. I can't stop doing what I do, and Wayne can't.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say before, in Detroit, there was a huge jazz scene at the time. I mean, the 50s. And you saw Baker's Keyboard Lounge, and the Five used to go off into these jazz flourishes and avant-garde and kind of like just really I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like a really free form. It's really a free form thing they put with this. It was really good, and
like bebop.
Well, the next stage after post bebop, with the coming of in the mid '60s, Archie Shepp and John Coltrane and Sun Ra and Albert Ayler and Cecil Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
There was a whole movement in jazz that broke away from bebop and improvising melodies over standards to a newer and I'd like to think more pure sonic dimension. It was a huge influence on me and the MC5 because I had to answer the question, if I'm playing my best Chuck Berry solo, where's the next step? How do I go one step beyond?
Right.
And I got the answer in the free jazz movement. So we embrace that completely. And I think Mike mentioned an important consideration in that Detroit has always been the home of great musicians. Going back to the 20s and 30s, if the big band leaders needed new musicians, they would go to Detroit to find them because of the great music programs at Northwestern and at Cass Tech. They would produce the highest caliber players that all the band leaders wanted, and that continued through the bebop era and the small groups. And then with the coming of rhythm and blues, I mean, that Motown recording band, the Funk Brothers, those were all bebop players. They were jazz musicians, but they didn't play down to pop music. They applied everything they knew about harmony and syncopation and rhythm to popular music, which is, it's still some of the most sophisticated songwriting in the world.
Yeah, very transcendent. Well, finally, from one expat Detroiter to another, I got to ask you before we drop off the call, when you get back into town, into Detroit, what's the food or dining establishment that you always have a hankering for the most?
Italian.
Well, it used to be Coney Islands and stuff like that, but then you had Greek food, and now you've got Arabic and Lebanese food has been huge in Detroit for years before it's gotten out to the world and to America. I grew up next door to Lebanese kids I played with, and I learned, and they had this kibbeh, whatever that was, when I was, in '60s. No one else knew that. I mean, that's just getting around now out here, and whatever. There's just just like music, there's a ton of great food in Detroit.
Yeah, there's great food in Detroit. My wife is Lebanese, so I know all about kibbeh and fattoush and tabbouleh.
Yeah, there you
we
go.
have it all the time. Checker Barbecue is always one of my favorites in Detroit. The soul food is world class. But
Indeed.
you're right. I mean, I agree with you anyway that Detroit has good eating. There's a lot of good restaurants in Detroit. Good food. I mean, these are people that work hard, and you work hard, you play hard, and you want to have put something in your cake hole that matters.
You got to remember, Detroit was a smoky, dirty factory town in the 50s and 60s. I mean, it was. It 24 hours a day they were making cars. It wouldn't stop at 9 to 5. It was 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think there was a lot of tension because black folks were getting the jobs and the pay with the car companies. They may have been floor sweepers, or I'm not even sure if they were on the line at the time back then.
Mm-hmm.
They were last hired, first fired, and they got the worst jobs on the shop floor. The most dangerous jobs, the most toxic jobs. And the reasons behind the rebellion of 1967 were that people of color, black people in particular, did not share in the prosperity that white Detroiters experienced. They didn't share in it economically, they didn't share in it culturally, and they didn't share in it politically. They were elbowed outside of life in Detroit, and then you add the Detroit Police Department coming down on them, just like they've always done. It's no surprise that the place didn't burn down sooner.
The all white police department.
Yeah, all white shop foreman.
Yeah. Yeah,
you're asking for it.
Now, I always thought that the white flight from Detroit had a reason, because when Malcolm X and Martin Luther King came to town in '62, I think it was, or freaked everybody out on the east side of Detroit. The long parade, there was like 100,000 people down there.
Yeah.
Most black folks. The east side people started moving out to the suburbs right away after that. They were flipping out, really.
Well, they really moved after the rebellion, and that's when everybody in Detroit started buying guns, and then where before then, if two neighbors had an argument, they might have a fist fight, and someone gets a bloody nose, and afterwards they're all strapped, and they break out their shit and they start shooting. I mean, a city of just over 1 million people with 900 homicides a year, that's, but that has to do with larger economic forces, that the big three came in and raked all the money off. And then when the Japanese and the Koreans came up with better ideas for cars, they took their money and went home. They moved their plants to Kentucky, where there was no unions.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up with a city full of workers and no work. And of course, desperate times make people desperate, and they start doing desperate things. And heroin flooded the city, and the result was chaos.
Yes.
And really the destruction of what was once a great American city.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, less than 700,000 people in the city of Detroit today.
There are still veins of greatness there, but you're seeing a lot of the social vestiges of better times and better, or at least grander times, and try to revitalize. Well,
I mean, they're trying. And, I support them 100%. I do what I can to help, but it's tough there. Without an industry or a manufacturing base, I think Detroit probably one day could be Portland, a nice, small American city, but it'll never be what it was in the 60s and in the 70s.
Yeah. 50s, 60s,
Exactly.
and 70s.
Well, gentlemen, it's poetically appropriate you've regaled us tonight with entertaining tales and provoking thoughts as you've always done with your art. As Detroiters past and present, we're deeply proud of how you represent us with energetic eloquence and conscience, and I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks,
Thank you, Vlad.
Very
It's
elucidating.
been a pleasure.
So that wraps up our conversation for tonight. Look for Mike Steele's 67 Riot single on all streaming platforms and at MikeSteele.com. And look for his amazing vinyl pressing that just came out from Third Man Records. That's a nice way to keep it in the Detroit family, man. So kudos to that.
Oh, good. Thanks. Thanks for saying that.
I just got mine, Mike.
And I got this. I just
Thank
got
you.
this today.
Looks
I
good.
just got this
Yeah,
today.
there it is.
I'm reading it. I've been reading it.
Aha.
The hard stuff.
No floppy disk.
Yeah.
Yeah, how's that work?
Huh.
How do you bootleg that thing? Can I rip
There are
that?
ways. Chuck has ways. Yeah. And catch Wayne Kramer's soundtrack to the Cream documentary, now available for on demand on all streaming platforms. And pay attention to the Foundation for Sonic Rehabilitation of People in the Penal System. That's a very admirable effort you're doing, Wayne.
Thank you. It's the jailguitardoors.org if anyone wants to learn what we do and how we do it and they want to help. We have 2.3 million of our fellows behind lock and key today. And if we don't do something to help them change for the better while they're in custody, they will most certainly change for the worse. And 95% of them are coming home someday, and they're going to sit next to you at the movies, if we ever get to go back to the movies, and they'll stand next to you in line 6 feet apart at the supermarket. So we can do something now to mitigate the damage. Go to jailguitardoors.org and help us out.
Well put. And Chuck Alkazian has a never-ending stream of productions on his plate. I especially fancy his recent run of 80s covers, and you can find them on all major streaming platforms. So shout out to you, Chuck, as well.
Thanks, Vlad. I appreciate it. It's just a fun little project I'm doing just to bring some happiness to some people.
Yes, indeed. And I'd be most remiss if I didn't acknowledge the immense help we got from Gina Giuliano at Unleashed Music in making this conversation happen. Gina, you're the best, and thank you again.
Gina, thank you.
Gentlemen, peace and health, and I wish you all the best, and maybe talk again in the future.
Thank you.
See ya.
Peace,
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
You're listening to Rock at Night.
The introductory song, Get On Down, is from blues artist Billy Bass Alford. Look for his music at ReverbNation.com.